Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Wiltshire series. Wiltshire has some of the most spectacular scenery of any county in England. It also has some stunning villages, so let's dive in and see what this one has in store for us. Hello everybody in Wiltshire. I thought I'd start this episode with a cracking view. Take a look at this. Isn't that just amazing? You can see for miles here, absolutely miles. It's beautiful, it really is. I would love to live in one of the houses that has that view. That's these here. Wouldn't it be great to wake up and look out of your bedroom window and see that every morning? Well, the people who live in those houses are lucky that they do, and they live in a place called Edington. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Edington, Etha's Hill. This week in Wiltshire, we're taking on Edington, the biggest village so far in the county and the one with the most to talk about. Edington lies about 4 miles to the northeast of Westbury, the next big village along the former turnpike road that we met in Erlestoke. Like its near neighbours, it too lies under the northern slope of Salisbury Plain and its boundaries extend south onto it. Although what you see here today is all Edington village, the ancient parish had 3 tithings. These were Edington, Tinhead and Baynton and Coulston, the latter of which contained West Coulston before it was absorbed into Coulston Parish in 1934. Tinhead still exists, but not as the independent settlement it once was. Historically, Edington is very important. It's believed that it was here where King Alfred the Great won a decisive battle in 878 AD against the Danes. The skirmish is known as the Battle of Edington and formerly was known as the Battle of Ethandun, which is the Saxon name for the place. Fast forward to the 14th century and that's when a massive church was built for Edington Priory. It still stands in all its glory today and it's considered one of the finest buildings in Wiltshire. Edington also has a station, a well, a pub and so much more. So without further ado, let's go walking again. We start with a little drive into Edington via its old railway station, located half a mile to the north of the village on the Reading to Taunton line. Originally part of the Sturton Westbury Railway, which was built across the parish in 1900, the station was named Edington and Bratton because it served not only Edington, but also its close neighbour to the west. The station opened initially for goods traffic only, a month before passenger trains were allowed to use the line. A brick building containing the main facilities stood on the westbound platform and a waiting shelter was provided for passengers travelling eastbound. There was also a goods shed to the west of the main building too. Passenger trains only lasted until the 1950s. It was 1952 when the last train called at Edington and soon afterwards most of the buildings were demolished. However, a couple do still remain. The goods shed and the yard remained open for traffic until 1963 and even today the site is still industrial. The line remains in use, but trains now just sail past this part of Edington's history. After parking on a street called the Weir, we're into our main walk. Here's a 16th century house called the Monastery Garden. If you follow the high wall around its edge, which the house itself is built into, you'll find yourself standing outside the biggest and most important religious building in the area, Edington Priory Church. This carries dedications to St Mary, St Catherine and All Saints. A Grade 1 listed house called the Priory, immediately north of this church, is believed to incorporate parts of the former monastic buildings, which this would have been tied to. Edington Priory was a monastery of the Brothers of Penitence, or Bons Hom. The buildings were destroyed by 1579, and only earthworks remain today in the immediate vicinity of this church. The whole 14th century church survives, and it was restored by Charles Ponting between 1888 and 1891. It was listed Grade 1 in 1968. Ponting also restored that limestone cross in the churchyard, which may date from the early 15th century. William Gullick, the designer of the New South Wales coat of arms, was baptised in this very building in 1858. As ever, when entering a church, you should always look up. Check out this beautiful ceiling. If you wander down the nave, you'll come to a tomb which is referred to as the Baynton Monument. This fine example of craftsmanship is thought to be of the late 15th century, with some extremely rare original colouring. It's an outstanding feature of the church, but nobody really knows who lies here. It's believed this man, though, was a bon homme and an ecclesiastic of evident dignity. Next to him, you'll see there's a war memorial tablet. Unveiled in 1924, 24 names are listed upon it. Well, let me tell you folks, you could wander around this church all day and not get bored, because there's so much to look at. It's almost cathedral-like in its appearance, both inside and outside too. Look at this in the chancel. Big window there. Lots of light streaming in. Beautiful stained glass up here to the right as well. And also in the chancel, there's another tomb. Now, I can't read all of what the writing says at the back. I can make out bits of it. I know there are two people in that tomb. One of them is Edward Lewin, who was Welsh, apparently, according to the plaque at the back. But I don't know much more than that because it's really hard to tell what it says, to be honest with you. So let's have a wander back through here. You can see how big this is. Just, you know, cavernous church, isn't it? Massive. And that ceiling is definitely something else. And like I said, you could spend all day in here and you still wouldn't get bored. There's a couple of side chapels. Here's one here. Don't ask me to read what that says up there. It's far too high up for me to attempt to read it. And there you go. That is the church, the Priory Church here in Edington. There's plenty more to the village than just this, though. I mean, this is obviously the star attraction. You can't deny that. You really can't deny that. And you'll see as we walk around that this is the biggest and best feature Edington has, bar none. But there are some other ones, and we're going to make our way out of the church now towards a smaller one, and one I don't know whether I'm actually going to be able to find. It's a well. I looked on the map to try and find said well, and it appears to get to it, you have to go down a path that doesn't really exist. We'll soon find out. Let's see if we can find the well and what else we can find in Edington. We exit the church via a path that runs to Inmead, the road to the immediate west. Inmead has several notable buildings, including the Grange, an 18th century brick house with stone dressings. It was reputedly at one time occupied by Lavinia Fenton, the well-known London actress who was the mistress and then wife of Charles Powlett, the 3rd Duke of Bolton. Inmead also has White's Farm, a late 16th century timber-framed and thatched house. Speaking of thatched properties, just around the corner, one was having its thatch replaced. That was quite a unique sight. After walking up Greater Lane, you'll find yourself at Seymour House. It's not that building, it's the one behind it. The Seymour name is important in Edington. Thomas Seymour, brother of Henry VIII's wife Jane, acquired property here after the monastery was dissolved. He didn't own it for long though, because he was executed in 1549. Seymour House used to be called Greater Lane Farm, and it appears to be undergoing some sort of renovation at present. Turn around and you're met with this view. The land here rises steeply to the northern edge of Salisbury Plain. We're not climbing that, thankfully. Instead, we're off to find the Monk's Well, which is sometimes known as the Ladywell Spring. As I suspected, access to this is not easy. You have to walk downhill through a muddy swamp-like area which has no real footpath, but the effort is well worth it. Tucked away in the corner of this little midden is a small Grade 1 listed 14th century building set into the hillside. It sits over the Ladywell Spring with its stone water troughs about 400 metres southwest of the church. A conduit once carried water from this spring to the monastery. Well, let me tell you, not the easiest landmark to get to, and really that path doesn't exist, but here we are anyway. Brilliant, isn't it? You know, it's a small thing, but sometimes the small things are the best things. Listen to that sound of rushing water. It's brilliant. Speaking of the water, crystal clear. Beautiful. After walking up Westbury Road for a while, we find ourselves at the Parish Hall. This is a characterful little building. With the capacity to cater for around 80 people, this was built in 1885, originally as the Sunday school for the Priory Church. That's why it looks like a little chapel. In 1996, the hall became a registered charity, and it's now run by a management committee. A range of events are held there, including the Edington Music Festival, the Gardening Club Flower and Produce Show, a charity Christmas card sale, and even a pumpkin day. Continuing east along, by the way, what was the Salisbury to Bath turnpike, we've reached an open field. On the other side of the road is a small group of cottages at the foot of a lane leading to the Downs. This used to be called Little London, but its present name, the City, was adopted in 1886. The City has a couple of buildings which are linked to each other. Here you're looking at the old Bratton Telephone Exchange, which has been converted into a house. The modern exchange is next door. It came into service in 1980 to replace the old one, which had served the area since 1932. Almost at the other end of the village now, here we have the Three Daggers farm shop, which takes its name from the pub next door. This is housed in a beautiful oak timber frame structure, which is flooded with light. It's also packed full of amazing fresh foods, local produce and gifts. I've linked their website below. In its car park, I found this amazing information board about Edington, which shows some of the historic buildings and what they were once used for. This was very detailed, so I invite you to have a read if you're ever in the area. It's well worth your time. Behind the farm shop is Edington playing field with all the usual bits and bobs you'd expect from such a facility. The site of the pub has been occupied for almost 300 years. Old maps show there was once a barn for wool storage on its car park. In 1750, it was demolished to make way for the pub. At first, the pub had no name, but it was referred to by its patrons as the Three Daggers in reference to the Powlett family crests, which were embellished upon its doors and sides. The name has stuck, even though it was renamed the Lamb for a short time in the mid-19th century. A couple of paces further brings us to an old school. This originated as a national school and it was built in 1877. It closed in 1956 owing to falling pupil numbers. Many children from Edington now go to the primary school in Bratton. Secondary school children go to Trowbridge, Lavington or Westbury. Just after the school is a bus shelter with one of the prettiest bits of artwork I've ever seen on its back wall. How about that? The shelter serves as a book exchange and right next to it is the parish notice board. 4 down in Wiltshire, 254 to go. No sweat. Of course, this is where you can catch a bus too. Edington is served by the same buses we met in Erlestoke, primarily the number 87. The red building opposite is an old blacksmith shop. Let's head down the side of that onto Tinhead Road. Landmarks here are a little less plentiful, but there is a nice little pond halfway down the street. The area we're in, though, is in itself a landmark. Historically, Tinhead was the name given to this part of the village, but it only exists now in the street name. The name was last recorded on an OS map in 1945. Tinhead has some lovely buildings, a lot that are listed too. These aren't just limited to Tinhead Road either, because there are a few of note on Westbury Road too. Tinhead used to have an early 18th century coaching inn called the George, which would have served travellers on the Salisbury to Bath turnpike. Other listed properties include the 16th century Shaw House and the 17th century Beckett's House. I'm sure there are plenty more both in Tinhead and in Edington as a whole, but with other villages still to cover, I made my way to Green Hills via a short footway. Okay, so from here it's pretty simple. It's just a walk straight back down the weir to where we began, and that is Edington. If you do come here yourself, be prepared for the hills. I know we talk about hills in other parts of the country like Yorkshire and Derbyshire being very steep. Out here in Wiltshire, trust me, they're very underrated. And folks, that's it for Edington, another fabulous place with plenty of history. We're getting quite acquainted with Wiltshire, and by now it will come as no shock to learn that the next village over has more of the same. Mind you, things are about to go up a notch, not just historically, but also visually. You'll see what I mean in due course. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.